All right, my name is Jeff with the Big Hairy Dog, and this is a Big Hairy Dog webinar on version 8 reporting. So that's our agenda. We're going to go over the types and creating some reports and report groups and basic troubleshooting, right? Okay, so the types are kind of important. In version 8, the types here, they're very distinctive. They have certain qualities that they give you when you're building a report or when you're running a report. So it's kind of critically important to understand what those types are and what they do, right? So let's chat about reports. Maybe it'd be better if we were actually in reports. Just a side note, getting to reports, analysis reports, right? You can also, if you wanted to, you could go find the reports executable that would be in the Retail Pro. So Retail 8 R Pro folder, you could grab that and you could create a shortcut that would be directly to reports, right? You could bypass the main menu if you just wanted to hop into reports and you didn't want to have to open Retail Pro first, right? You just wanted to go right into reports. Okay, so journals. What's a journal? Journal is a transaction-based report. And everybody can see the screen okay? I'm hoping. I got my screen shared out to a 24-inch screen, so I could probably adjust that if I needed to. But and if you have any questions, there's a chat. Feel free to drop a thing in the chat, or if you would prefer, just raise your hand and I can unmute you. If you want to be unmuted and you want to chat directly, I got no issues with that. So, all right. Let's get back to journals. Journals are transaction-based reports. So if I run a sales journal, a sales receipt journal for today, because I don't think I have any other sales, dynamic date range, right, today. All right, so we see 3 lines in the report, right? We see the third column, I guess, receipt number 1, 2, and 3, right? And you can see exactly when I made those, right? So let's talk about journals for. All right. Well, yeah. All right. Yeah. Well, we'll get there. So, a receipt journal is looking for transactions. So, if I filter a receipt journal to an item, I am not going to find the total sales for that item. I'm going to find the total sales for all transactions that had that item on it. Does that make sense to everybody? So, a journal is good for finding a piece of detail. The drawer is short, and I need to see all the transactions that were done on that register, right? That's a good journal. All right. So journals are not about reporting items. They're about reporting transactions. Now, that could be the accountant wants to see all receiving vouchers from last month for vendor XYZ, right? It could be I need to see all open POs for a given vendor. I need to see all special orders or deposits or layaways or transfer orders. I mean, there's other things besides sales to run journals on, right? But in all cases, a journal is about the transaction, not about the item, right? Okay. So merchandise, the next category. A merchandise report is basically the polar opposite of a journal. Whereas a journal must see the transaction. You can't even save it without the transaction built into the report. A merchandise report cannot see the transaction. It can see multiple data types, which makes sense. Okay, if you can see all the receipts and you can see all the purchase orders and you can see all the receiving, you can't list all the transaction numbers. That's just crazy, right? So a merchandise report is about multiple data types. It's about saying on hand next to sales, next to on order, that's what it's about. So, and you can see right here some examples, right? On hand and sales by item. Sales by department, last 7 versus last year. So that's got 2 sales ranges, right? So these are all different versions of multi-data types. Very powerful format, by the way. In version 8, this is a supremely cool report. Summaries. this is by far the meat and potatoes. This is the solid report. If you're probably looking for an answer, there's probably a summary that can give it to you, right? So now journals and summaries are not multi-data type reports. That's a merchandise report. So these are all one-trick ponies, right? I can run a sales journal on sales. I can run a purchase order journal on purchase orders, right? I can run a sales summary in here on sales, or I could run a transfer report, right? Or I could run a on-hand report. Can we get these sorted? That's going to be much better. So adjustments, right? Payroll, inventory, purchase orders, receiving, sales, right? Transfers, sales orders. So when you start building these are the data types you can build on. When you select one of these, you pick the type of data going into the report, right? Which we're going to do in a bit. So, okay. The last section there is list, and that's kind of the catch-all for the things that didn't really fit anywhere else, right? So if I want to see a list of customers, if I want to see a list of department codes or employees or vendors, right? That's what these are. Now to run any one of these, I don't have any of those. I don't have any data for any of those, so we'll circle around on that. So first off, does everybody kind of get the report types, right? Journals are transactions, merchandise are multi-data type, summaries, they summarize, right? You can summarize it you can summarize the transactions, you can summarize the items, right? I mean, either one. And lists are just lists. Okay, let's move on down this exciting hit parade to creating a report, right? Okay, so let's build a little report, right? Let's go run a report first. Let's start with summaries. Summaries are easy. Let's take a basic report. I mean, I think department summary is about as basic as it gets. So let's click print at the top, and today's date is fine. That's all I got. I don't have any sales to amount to much. Right. So there is. And let's magnify this a little bit. There's a basic report. So on the top, you see that it's got a name, it's got some sales info, it's got a sort and a filter, right? Now the sort, that defines what the report is about, right? The level of detail of reporting. Okay, you with me on that? Probably not. If you've got a bunch of data, okay, I draw pictures. It's what I do, okay? Don't make fun of me. All right, so you've got a bunch of data in inventory, right? And this data has department codes and vendor codes and style numbers and descriptions and colors and sizes and lions and tigers and bears, right? So all these items have all those values, right? So when you're going to build a report, you've got to decide, okay, when I drill down, I want these items organized. Like what level do I want to see? Do I want to see the full item? Do I want to see the item number for each one? Or do I want to group them by department code, right? And then if I group them by department code, do I then want to group them by vendor code within a given department? I want all like vendor items together. And then if I'm grouping them by vendor, do I want to then group them by the style number? And if they're grouped by style, do I want to then group them by color and then by size, obviously, right? If I'm seeing the item. Now, if I'm not seeing the item, in the case of our department summary, we're grouping by department code. That's it. So when we see this note here that says sort, and that's a terribly important concept, by the way, terribly important. And we will come back to it when we start building reports. So do you want to save this? No, I don't really. So let's hop down to another example. Let's go to a vendor summary, right? Let's click print, and today is fine, okay. And boom, there's the same thing, except this one's by vendor code, right? So the grouping or sorting here is vendor code, VC. And you notice that both reports basically are the same thing. Quantity sold, original price, discount, actual price out the door, cost dollars, merchandise, margin dollars and margin percent, right? And I just grabbed some squirrely data off the network that is wacky and it doesn't look like we have good, we have some wacky numbers in there, right? All right, so let's build a combination report. Let's build a report that looks at, I'm going to make big buttons here, department code by vendor, okay? And no, I don't want to save that, thank you. So we'll do one department code by vendor, and then we'll do one vendor by department code. So I'm going to start off by just clicking new here. Okay, now in the menu here to build a report, got sales merchandise, sales transaction, transfer merchandise, receiving merchandise, sales order merchandise and transaction, PO merchant transaction, inventory, quantity adjustments, price adjustments, cost adjustments, right? So this, if you're talking about department codes, they aren't in the transaction, right? The transaction is the receipt number, the tender type, right? That's the transaction, right? So this is part of merchandise, right? So we're going to click sales merchandise. We're going to call this, we probably should be good. What they do is they say sales, DCS by VC summary, right? So they name their reports with the data type in the first field, right? So that they group together all the sales ones together, right? I mean, kind of makes sense. Everybody on board with that? Any questions? No questions? I don't see any, no hands up, no questions. Although not all of our attendees are actually looking at our screen right now. It's okay, I get it. Yes, I can see that. It's all right, I get it. You guys multitask. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and set a default date range. Which is fine, that's all the data I have, right? And I'm going to grab a filter. I'm just going to pick a generic filter that's called sales, which is fine. Now let's go over here to the sidebar menu and let's go to sort. So I want the grouping. I don't want it by item number. I want it by department code, DCS, and then by vendor code, right? Now, I'm going to pull a trick, fast one on you. I'm going to take DCS out. So DCS stands for department, class, subclass. The master department, the classes that are within that department, and then subclasses as they break down right further, right? And we're going to skip down a little bit. And so here you see DCNS, right? Now, is it different if I group it by DCS versus DCS? Not really. As far as grouping down, sorting, it's pretty much the same, right? But it is different if you want a subtotal by a separate element. So I guess we'll leave it there and see where we land, right? So let's go to our layout here. In our layout, we're going to get rid of that, and we're going to get the same elements we have on the other side. And of course, I'm not finding what I want. There we go. So let's grab DCS. Let's get Mr. Vendor Code. Okay, there's Mr. Vendor Code. Now, if we wanted to, we could embellish those. So normally you don't want to put anything in your layout that's not in your sort, but D name, department name, and class name and subclass name, as well as vendor name, they really just describe the elements we already have in the report, right? So if we wanted to, we could say D name, C name. Now I'm going kind of crazy here, right? This is a little overkill. Probably don't need those names in there, but it's not going to hurt us, right? So now, what I have so far is the sort, and I have the layout for the sort. All those are descriptive components, right? So if I go into the sort here and look, everything in the sort is descriptive, right? It's drilled down into the data, right? What you don't see here, you don't see anything that says extended price or quantity sold, right? So the sort is about drilling down, therefore describing what the report's going to be about, right? Whereas the layout has both descriptive, like this, and it has values, results, right? So if I come down a little further here, we should start seeing some stuff. Like there's my extended D discount dollars, extended costs. We're going to want extended costs. There's my quantity sold. Extended original price, maybe. I don't know. Like I like to see the discount percent, but do I care what the sales would have been had I not discounted these? I don't know. It's a little pie in the sky for me. Some people love to see that. I'm not a big fan of it. Discount percent, though, I like to know if it cost you money to sell that, yeah, discount percent's good. Margin percent, always good, right? Extended price, the actual dollars sold, I think we need that. I'm not sure we need extended margin dollars. So there's 4 or 5, there's 5 things, I guess. I'll just write them down for you so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. When you see these things like extended P dollars, right? What's the P mean? Well, P equals price, right? That means retail dollars sold, right? What does C mean? C equals cost, right? I don't think you have to be a rocket scientist to figure that one out. D, we already looked at D, right? And that one equals discount dollars, right? I didn't have to put the dollars in there, but you get where I'm going. So we got P, we got C, we got D, we got M. We saw that one, right? M equals margin dollars, right? And the last one that you would see would be T, right? And T equals, drum roll please, tax dollars, right? Now you can see them working in conjunction, right? So you could see, like for instance, you could just see P dollar sign in a menu. That would mean unit price, right? As opposed to extended, right? P dollar sign, right? As opposed to extended P dollar sign, P dollar sign. What's that? That's if you're a European and you're using value-added taxing and you do price plus tax, right? That's what that is. So you could also see like extended either P dollar sign, right? Or sometimes they express it as extended O P dollar sign, right? So those are all just versions, right? But you could see, for instance, I've seen extended M dollar sign, T dollar sign, right? Extended margin dollars with tax. Like, why would I care? Like, I'm not going to get to keep the tax, so I don't care. Even in Europe, when I set up reports, I was over there setting up some stuff several years ago. Nobody really cared. I mean, for tender reconciliation to make sure your cash drawer balances, they care. But when you look at reports at the end of the day, you want to know what's your net dollars and what's the tax dollars in separate columns, right? I mean, pretty normal stuff. Anyway, that's just a quick once-over on you know, and we could probably bump that up. It's probably hard to see for you guys if you're on smaller computers. So don't let those little abbreviations confuse you. There's only 5, okay? There's price, cost, discount, margin, and tax. That's it. That's all you're going to see. Every version is one of those, right? And here's another weird one right here, right? AVG original P dollar, T dollar. Average original price. Okay, I'm not sure there's a big need for that field, but average price, very cool. Average original price, I'm not sure, right? Okay, so we got a bunch of fields. I would like to see probably quantity first, followed by price, followed by cost, followed by margin percent, and then discount percent probably. So I made X points on it, and it cost me this many percentage points to make that money, right? Okay, so now let's click Save, and let's click Print, and let's see what this looks like. All right, okay, So that's good. It's not bad. I'm dealing. I don't have department names because I don't have names. I don't even have departments actually. I didn't import those. So if we did have names though, it would say like C, and it would say what C is, like C clothing, right? And then it would say what the class is, and it would have the class name behind it. Would be nicer. Should have thought about that, but didn't have time. So do you want to save this? No, I don't. Now let's change a setting here. Let's go to the options section, and let's turn off non-repeat mode. And while we're at it, I mean, the names would be so cool if I had them, but I don't have them, so I'm going to chuck those just because they're kind of making it hard to read, and I don't want it to be hard to read. So let's try it again and see what this looks like. All right, does anybody see what the non-repeat mode did? So non-repeat mode basically says if an item over here on the left is the same, don't repeat it. So the S here, right, on the far left-hand side, the S is the same for each of these vendors. You follow? So it would not be being repeated. That's what that means. But then it's kind of an outline format. Like the S would be the first one, then there'd be nothing on the next ones below it because it would be the same and non-repeated. And that's kind of cool for people who like to read the report verbatim. But if you want to export to Excel and you want to sort these and play with them, you're going to need every line to have all the data, right? So you want to turn off non-repeat mode. If you're going to export to Excel, you want all the data, all of it. All right, so now what I would like to do is I'd like to break this up by the master departments. Okay, so let's try that. So on the far right here, we have layout, sort, totals. Now, the top box says when, then we got a what, and a grand total. So the bottom box is just grand total. It's by itself, it's grand total. I'm going to turn that on. That's good. I took the line from the top, and I grabbed the line and drew it to the bottom. I could have pushed each item by double-clicking it above the line. Obviously, double-clicking 5 times is not as efficient as dragging the line down once, correct? So now when do I want to subtotal? I want to subtotal on the department, not on the class, not on the subclass, not on the vendor code, just on the department. Okay, you with me? Everybody with me? All right. All right. Then below that, we got a subtotal what and a run total what. Well, what the hell is the difference? What's a subtotal versus a run total? Well, I think we all know what a subtotal is, right? At the bottom of this, total that section, right? What's a run total? Well, a running total is a cumulative total. So if I had department 1 and I had subtotal for department 1, then I had department 2, would I want to see a total of both department 1 and 2? And then for 3, would I want to see a total of 1, 2, and 3? No, probably not. That would be stupid. However, instead of doing departments, what if I was doing months? What if I had a January and a total for January, and then February and a total for January and February? Okay, now I'm looking at the total of February versus year to date, right? Year to date is a running total, right? So running totals are usually time related, days or hours or, weeks, months, right? So I don't need a running total. So what am I going to subtotal? That's everything, right? I'm greedy. I want it all. So I have a when is department on the top, just the D. Then I have everything in the subtotal, nothing in the running total. Running total is time-based, and then everything in the grand total, right? Everybody gets confused on this screen. It's so easy. But you got to do it once or twice before it kind of becomes easy, right? All right, so now you see we've got C, and then we got a subtotal on the far right for C. We got N, we got a subtotal for N. We got D and a subtotal for D. Let's make this bigger so we can actually see it. What the heck, right? We've got O. I can't even see. I'm blind. O and a subtotal for O, and then S and a subtotal for S, right? And then the grand total at the bottom. Okay. Now, I don't know about you, but I find this kind of hard to read. So I'm going to actually back out of here, reports. And we're going to close reports all the way. And we're going to hop back into regular Retail Pro and go to Options, Workstation Preferences. Now, in your Workstation Preferences, and since this is, in fact, Workstation Preferences, it's got to be done on every workstation, right? I.e. the name, Workstation Preferences, right? Okay, so in here under Reports, I don't know why it's here, by the way, insert a blank line after each subtotal. Really cool switch. I wish it was part of Reports, personally, but it's not. It's defined in your Workstation Preferences. So we're going to turn that on. We're going to click Save. All right, come on. You can do it. Thank you. We can go to Analysis, Reports, jump back into Reports, and go hop into Summaries. All right, and we named that DCS by vendor, right? So there it is, right? I'm going to click Edit, so we can be ready in edit mode again. I'm just going to click Print, and we're going to run it again. Same exact report. All I did is change the preference. Is it easier to read now with those inserted subtotals, that line, the little space? I'm going to go yes, by the way. I think that's amazingly helpful. But all right, okay. Now, do you want to save this? No, I don't. On the sidebar menu, we've done layout, sort, totals. We've not done ranking, but I want to kind of go up to the top here where it says there's two modes, design and appearance mode. I'm going to pop into appearance mode, and then on the sidebar menu, I'm going to click on column headings, and we're going to bump the column headings to bold. And I'm going to go to details. Actually, we're not going to do anything to details. We're going to leave details just the way it is. I'm going to go to totals, and I'm going to bump that to bold, and I'm going to go crazy here and change it to navy. We're going to save that and click print and see what that looks like. So this is just a little bit of embellishment, right, that makes it just a lot easier to read. Now we've got bold on the column headers, right? We've got the spaces, and we got the navy highlighting the totals to make it, yet again, even easier to read, right? All right. And I guess at this point, Andrea, it's just you and me. So maybe I upsetted the rest of them. I don't know. All right, so back to design mode on the sidebar menu. And ranking, what would ranking do? Ranking is for sorting, right? So if I wanted to sort them by quantity sold, I could put quantity sold above the line and click print, and let's test that out and see what that does. And let's see here. So down in the S's here, you see that they're now grouping so that the 87 is on top, and then the 81, then the 14, and then the 6, and then the 2, right? All right. So so when you're ranking, you can rank it by whatever you want, by dollars, by quantity. You can do 2 levels of rank. And if you're doing quantity, it's probably not a bad idea to have a tiebreaker, because you could sell one of 2 different items, right? So then secondary rank would be the one that sold the most, right? Not uncommon. Or you could not rank them at all, in which case they should be alphabetical. All right, so let's go back to our little list, see where we are, right? So common changes. Well, sort and layout, moving fields around, very common. Sort and layout we beat up pretty well. Ranking we just touched on, right? We have not talked about filters, though. Filters are a very important aspect here, right? So if I wanted this report to run a certain way, right? So if I was running this print, and every time I ran it, I had to come put something in here, like I wanted it to be store 1, right? Always on store 1. If I run that and then I close it out, do you want to save it? No, I don't. And I click print again, my filter now has to be redone, doesn't it? So to get around that, what we would do is we would, on the upper right corner here, go to the filters. So we got reports, and that's the default, and we got filters. Now, before we go there, in the second column here, you can see that we're using a filter called sales. Now, there might be a couple of other reports using that filter, right? So you see, if we edit that filter called sales, we're going to break, 40 other reports to fix one. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to filters. We're going to find the sales filter right on top there. We're going to click copy. We're going to give it a new name. So I'm going to call this sales store 1, right? And then we're going to click on that, click edit, and we're going to go to criteria. So there's 2 modes here. In elements, you can add things like if I wanted to have receipt number or weekday or month or something, I could add that by double clicking it and putting it into the filter. Then in criteria mode, you can actually edit this and make permanent edits to the filter, right? So we can open that up, select our store, click OK, click Save, and back out of that. So now that has a new name and it's got new criteria. Let's go back to Reports. In Reports, click Edit, and let's hop down here to the Options tab. Now the Options tab we haven't played with a lot, but it's got the name, it's got the access level, the default date range, the default filter. So we're going to change the default filter to be our new filter, right? We got our orientation here. I want our orientation to be normal portrait, not landscape. Non-repeat mode is turned off. Align feed after data block with double space the report. In this case, we don't want that. Record limit, that would be if I'm doing a bestseller, a ranked report, right? Then I could say I only want to see the top 25 by each department or something. Then I've got other things like receipt types allowed, right? Sales and returns, and high security receipts not allowed. Checking it out not allowed, right? And voided transactions are not allowed either. Reversed or reversing are not allowed. Only real ones. And of course, net sales, right? If you don't have net sales turned on to net yes, then what you get is if you sold 10 items and you had 2 returned, I think we would all agree that the 10 minus 2 is 8, right? We sold 8. But if you have that set to no, then it's going to say 12, right? Because you processed 12 items, but only sold actually out the door 8 because 2 of them got returned, right? We're all good on that. Okay, so save that. Click print. Now cancel. Click print and click OK. Right. So now at the top, filter store 1, automatic. I didn't put that in there, right? The date range or the store. Those are both defaults at this point. They can be changed at runtime, but by default, if you don't change them, they will be what we made them to be, right? All right. So that's some basics on building reports in a summary, right? Let's go compare and contrast that to a journal and a merchandise report real fast. Let's see what's unique about them. So if we go over to a journal, let's just take the basic sales receipt journal. And I'm going to click edit to start with. Company name that's the customer's company name. It's most of us don't sell to companies, we sell to people, and I'm not sure I need to see that anyway, so I'm going to check that. Store, good to have store, totally for store. That being said, then I'm going to go ahead and save it just the way it is. So we got receipt number, date, time, cashier, original, amount, discount, price, tax dollars, shipping fees, total, and how it was paid for, right? Not bad for a receipt journal, right? So I'm going to back up on that, and I'm going to take that report and copy it. And I'm going to call this one receipt journal with item detail. Okay, so where journals have the ability to have another layer down. So I'm going to go ahead and click on edit and options. And right here it should say show item detail. So we're going to say yes to that, turning on the item detail. And then I'm going to click on details so I can see what in the item will be included. Item number, department code, vendor code, color, size. I'd like the style number before the color and size. And I've got price, discount percent, and cost. I don't need cost. And I'm going to pop down a little ways and grab description 2, because most of us want both description 1 and 2. Maybe we want margin, maybe we don't. I don't know. I'm just going to click OK on that one. Click Save, Print, and we are on today. Perfect. Not going to filter it. All right, so now that report is very different than the one I ran earlier in journals, right? I mean, very different. So this report's a little bit difficult to read, so we're going to adjust some of the options on it to make it a little bit easier to read. So in the options, I'm going to turn off non-repeat mode, and I'm going to turn on line feed. Now, line feed in a normal summary would double space the report, but here, the data block, right, the line feed after the data block is a transaction, right? That is the transaction. So let's click Save and Print and OK. And is this easier to read? I'm going to go yes, by the way. So now you see the store number repeats, i.e. it's an outline format. When it hits the left-hand margin, you talk about a new transaction, right? And then indented is the items, right? All right, so now it's going off the page, right? But I could probably just flip it to landscape, right? And that probably would fix the problem. If not, I could reduce the font size in that appearance setting, right? Yeah, and that pretty much makes it fit. I think there's a subtotal or something that's going over the line or something, because it still wants to kick out to that second page, but there's nothing printing on it. Kind of weird. But we're not here to troubleshoot this report. So anyway, so with journals, you can see item detail or not, right? And you can edit your item detail in the Details tab. That's pretty much the big mystery with journals. Now, merchandise reports, and you're not asleep, I hope, Andrea. Trying to keep it as lively as I can. It's not the most exciting topic. All right, so with a merchandise report, if I click New on this, it doesn't ask me what kind of data type because it's got multiple, right? So let's say we're going to do, department versus, we'll do vendor by department, right? Because we said we were going to do that. So we'll do vendor by department, DCS, right? This year versus last year, okay? Reasonable topic, right? Okay, so let's go get our sort. Our sort is going to be vendor first, right? So I'm going to do vendor code. Now, when I'm sorting, I could sort by vendor code or I could sort by vendor name, right? What's the difference? Vendor code is in the data. It's on the item. Vendor name is not. Vendor name is editable. It is in the vendor database only. Be very careful with that. You're better off sorting with values that are in the inventory screen permanently, right? So we want it vendor code by DCS, which is fine probably. Okay, and then in the layout, I want to do the same thing, vendor code by DCS. And I'm going to want to know how many I sold this year and last year, right? So let's go down and get that. Let's go down here and see. Well, wait a second. I got a quantity, but it's a DT1 quantity. And if I keep going, I got a DT2 quantity. And if I keep going, I got a whole bunch of these, all the way to 16. So what we need to do first is go to Options, find our data types, and set them up, right? So if I click the little button, it says Add. I say Add here. Let's say Net Sales, and I'm going to call this year, TY, last 90 days. Now we're going to need to include today, or we're not going to get anything. So I'm going to say TY sold. I mean, I don't really need to say sold because we don't have any on hand. Both of these are sold, right? But okay. So I'm going to go ahead and say question mark days, and we're going to go 91 days starting 90 days ago, so that we do in fact include the 3 sales I made today. Otherwise, we're not going to get anything, right? And I'm going to go ahead and add another one, and this one will be LY last 90 days. And be nice to yourself, change your column header, right? And I want to say, give me, 90 days. And what we have to do now is do the math, right? So we want 90 days, but we also want it to be a year back. So we've got to say 365 plus 90 is 455, right? So we're going to do 90 days starting 455 days ago. And except for the fact that I bumped the date on top out 1 extra day, right? So I'd have some sales. And I could do that again. I could go back into here and say, make this 91, right? Starting 455 ago. And now the data ranges should line perfectly, right? So now we know that the first line here, number 1, or data type number 1, is this year, right? So now if we go back to layouts, these start to make sense. So here's this year's quantity. Here's this year's price, dollars sold. There's cost, dollars sold, right? And here's our discount percent. There's our average unit price. There's our penetration, right? And then there's margin. Let's keep it simple for now. And here's the 2. We'll grab the same stuff on 2. I'm glad to see you're still with me, Andrea. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to holler out, because it's pretty much you and me now. And I'd like to answer any questions you have. So in here, what I would probably do, you could do it this way. This isn't bad, right? I would probably, if I was going to do it this way, I would probably swap these two. I'd rather see the margin next to the cost and price with the discount followed. But you also could do it this way, right? You could say, look, I want to see this year versus last year in a straight comparison, apples to apples with each of these. It's your choice, right, on how you want to do that one. And then, of course, in our totals, I would want a subtotal for vendor code, right? And click Save, click Print. Now, you don't need to put the dates in. You could go over here. I don't even have a filter. You could go and edit those on the fly, but why? Right, so there we go. There's by vendor code. We have an item defined with no vendor code out there. By vendor code, by department. And you see that the third department, fourth one, has 2 departments. Actually, a few of them have 2. And then a subtotal at the bottom, right? Excellent, perfect. All right, so with merchandise reports, you got 16 slots, 16 mailboxes to put data types in. So you could do, you could do 1 month ago, 1 month 2 months ago, 1 month 3 months ago, back for 12 months. You could make a trending report month by month, by item, by vendor, by department code, by whatever you want. Hopefully that makes sense a little bit. And of course, I did not bother to put a filter on here, but I should put a filter on here, right? You should be able to filter this if you want to, and I could just take the generic one and put it on there for now. Or I could go make my own, right? Got a few other options down here. If it's 0, do you want to show the item or the style, store, then max type, store, company, mostly everybody's store, by the way. And then the price levels. If you're using multiple price levels, most people aren't, they just have one. And I could also go to the appearance thing, and we could make them bold and all, but I'm not sure that's probably worth a great deal right now. So hopefully you're good on those. If you have any questions, I'd love to see them. But that's basically it for like common changes you'd make would be to move a new field in. I will do one other thing though. One other thing. Let's just take a simple. Let's make a faux pas. Let's make an error. Let's make the error that everybody makes that nobody ever gets until I slap their hand and tell them they made this mistake, right? So let's take this. Let's edit it. We're not going to save this edit. Now this layout. And this sort match, DCS, DCS. Everybody's happy, right? So we're sorting to a department code. What if I chose, instead of printing DCS, what if I printed the vendor code? Now I'm not grouping, I'm not sorting to the vendor code. So which vendor code is it going to print for each item? Well, the first one it finds, literally. So this kind of mistake here, where you're grouping at one level and you're printing yet something else, right, is very bad. This is about as bad as it gets, I think, in V8 reporting. Right now non-repeat mode is on, so the first two are both CGC, right? They're both the same. Now, that's the same vendor, but it's not the same department, right? Because we're grouping it by department, but we're not showing ourselves our grouping, are we? So let's go try turning off non-repeat mode. Which this makes it even, now actually that's a null value. So non-repeat mode was not causing that. That's actually items with no vendor code, right? But here again, the problem that I was worried about, it does exist, right? So if I was reading this report, the top item is CGC, the bottom item is also CGC with different sales numbers, right? That makes no sense, right? That's bad data. That's lying to yourself is what that is. Now, if we went back into our layout and we put the department code back, right, and click print and OK, now the department code column is true. Oh, wrong, too big. All right, so now the department code is true, but the vendor code is still inaccurate, right? Because it's just showing one vendor per each department, because we're not grouping at that level, right? So if I went to sort and added vendor code now, and we ran that yet a third time here, right? And blew that up. Right, so now you can see that for Department S, there are 4 different vendors, right? But it was just grabbing the first one it found and grouping all those sales into one lump sum, because that's what I told it to do. So if you were to do something like in this scenario, this report is now built correctly, right? But if I was to add something like, I want to see the style number, I want to see description 1 in my not in here in the layout. So if not in the sort, if you were in the layout and you added description 1, which description 1 is it going to give you? The first one it finds for each category, right? So that's a really common mistake, because people come into the layout, they just add something and assume it's going to automatically group by that, and that is a bad assumption. That is actually inaccurate. So you see it did insert a description 1 in there, right? But only one for each one. So there's 81 of them, and they're all the same. Now let's go ahead and add it back into the sort. Click print, see if that changes the length of the report. It does. Right now, each of the descriptions print separately, right? Okay. We don't want to save any of that. Do you want to save these changes to this report? No, I do not. Okay. I think we're ready to move on to report groups, right? So report groups are a way of bundling more than one report together, right? So if I back out to the main reports menu, you see that the next thing below the types, the vendor, merchandise, summary list, is report groups. And I can go in here and click new, and I can give this a name. This is Jeff's report group. And then I could go to each one of these tabs, right? And I could decide what report I want to be in there. So I'd like to run the receipt journal with item details in the merchandise area. Man, there's a lot of supplemental. Oh, we're not really scrolling down correctly. All right, so here's my report I built, right? Vendor by DCS this year, last year. Put that above the line. So there, it's above the line. Go into here. We got sales. Oh, there it is right there, DCS by VEN VC summary. So I chose one report in the summary menu, one report in the merchandise, and one report in the journal. You can do as many as you want. Let's hit save. Let's click print. It wants to run all three. We click OK, and it runs all three. Boom, boom, boom. Right? And it just keeps going. Boom, boom, boom. Pretty cool. Exit. No. Exit. No. And one more time. Now, when you click print, you can, if you want to, click on each one of these, go to properties, and modify these if you wanted to change them for some reason. This could also be scheduled. This isn't a webinar on scheduling reports, but it is possible to schedule that group in the task scheduler. It's possible to call that group up and have it run unattended. In that case, the reports have to be fully designed. I mean, the filters have to be set. The date ranges have to be dynamic. They have to know what they're doing, right? It's got to be dialed in to schedule it, because ain't nobody going to be here at 1 o'clock in the morning when the thing fires off. All right, so all right, so moving on, I guess. Nothing to print. It's very possible you can get that. That's easy to do. So if we just take a summary report, so here's our report we built, right? If I run this for like last month, right? So if I say, well, let's just do week to date last year. Nothing to print. I got no data, right? So that's what that is. It's hard to, I mean, you got to have data in the time period or you're going to get that prompt. I think there's a command line parameter to run silent or to run without prompts. So if you're getting to the point of scheduling, give us a holler and we can help you set that up. All right, so let's click on edit. Nope, not new, edit. Okay, and edit, let's go back to run total and subtotal. So if I take these out, I've turned on a when, but I've not turned on what for either one, right? I'm going to get an error when I run this. Subtotal, run total, what not defined, right? So I said subtotal, but I didn't say what to do with it. Conversely, if I run it the other way, I'm going to get the opposite error, right? So now there's no when defined. If you do a when, you got to do a what, right? Now I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on real fast. And we're going to look at that running total real fast just because I don't think we need it. It doesn't make sense for you to ever run it for this kind of report. But I just wanted you to see it, right? So right there you can see, basically it's a cumulative total, right? So it's 10, then 120 plus 10 is 130, plus nothing is still 130, plus the 2,035 is now 2,365, right? So and in this kind of report here, where we're grouping it by month, right? So now it's going to see January, February, March, April, May, right? It might make sense to now do this here, right? To do a running total. Nothing to print, right? Nothing to print because it's going through the end of last month, right? It's going through October. So if we just go like this and say start 11 months ago, now it ends in September, right? So now it will have something to print. Of course, we only have 1 month. So in a running total, it's going to repeat the line and show you the running total value. That's only going to be redundant, though, for the first month. The second month, our line is going to include all of the previous months, right? So, it might be useful if you're doing time. I mean, I've had clients that have done running totals. They're just few and far between. All right. I think that pretty much wraps it up. I mean, as far as the last thing here, odd data, mostly that comes into play when you put something in your layout that you didn't sort to. I actually had a client who had that problem, and we discussed it, and I told them how to fix it, and they didn't believe me, so they had a tech fly to San Diego, who then called me, and I told him how to fix it, and he fixed it. If you group at the wrong level, and print at a different level, up or down, right? If your grouping is too high or too low, and you put different elements in your layout, you're lying to yourself, and you're gonna get bad data. You're gonna get odd data that doesn't make any sense. So you got to make sure that the layout and the sort are dialed in, right? Now that doesn't mean the layout has to be in the same order as the sort. For instance, in your basic, where are we here? Summaries, okay. So if we're in this item summary report here, I'm going to click edit on this one, and we're going to look at the sort. The sort is department code, vendor code, description, one attribute size. Okay, at that point, you're now down to an item, right? Now, if I wanted to be extra sure that there was nothing screwball in there, right, I could put item number in there or item SID, right, to be the tiebreaker, right? And the item SID is a system ID. That's an internal number, but item number is probably enough. Now, if I was over here on the layout, and I got department, vendor, description, one, attribute size, that is in fact the item, but I would actually like to see the item number. I would actually have it print, but the item number is in fact a reference point, right? It's not really, like I don't want to see them numerically, so I would not put it in the same spot. I would put it up here. I would have it be on the left-hand margin. And if I want to look at it, I'll look back at it, right? It says reference number. This happens to be the SKU that it landed on that we put into the barcode to sell it, right? If I want to find it quick, it's a good thing to know, but other than that, I don't really need to see it, right? What I don't want it to be is in the middle of the report. I don't want it to be a fence between the value, the descriptions I'm looking at and the results that I'm trying to evaluate, right? I just want it to either be here or I could put it here. It wouldn't matter. One end or the other, out of my way. So you see that the grouping here, it has to go there. It's a tiebreaker. If I was to accidentally, let's say I imported data, and when you import, you bypass all the rules that keep us human beings from making stupid mistakes, right? So if I imported the same item twice, it was exactly the same description, color, size, everything, which is bad, by the way. So what's going to happen is you're going to receive it on one SKU and you're going to sell it on the other, and the costs aren't going to balance. It's going to be a mess. You're going to create shrinkage, right? So we don't actually want to do that. But if we did that through an import tool, the item number would be the tiebreaker, right? They would be on different item numbers. There would be a different SKU in the system, and they would break out in the report now that I added item number down there, right, as the final tiebreaker. Anyway, we'll click save on that because that is not a bad change. That's a good change. All right, I'm going to say then at this point, I think we have dotted the I's and crossed the T's. Is there any questions or any report that you would like to see? Anything at all I could do for you there, Andrea? Hopefully you're still awake. I get it if you don't want to chat. That's totally fine. All right, well, then that being said, I'm going to thank you very much for joining me today on this exciting version 8 reporting webinar. And again, this is Jeff the Big Hairy Dog. And if you have any reporting questions, my email is jeffk, the letter K, JEFFK, @bighairydog.com. You can feel free to shoot me an email and I can answer a question if you have one. And okay, then I'm going to tell you guys to stay safe out there. It's been a crazy year and a half for everyone. And thank you again for attending. And I'm going to wrap it up. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.